Hello all, welcome to code.dev. In this video, we are going to see how to create a new table with create table command in SQL Database. As you can see, I am using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio to interact with my MS SQL Server database. I have already created a dummy database named ExtraDB and I am going to use this database in this tutorial. So to create a new database table, we need to use create table command. Followed by that, we need to specify the name of the table. Here, users is the name of the table and DBO is the name of the schema under which my users table is going to get created. Whenever we create a new table, if we don't specify the schema name, by default it will use DBO as the default schema. If we have more than one schemas and if we want to use any other schema when creating our table, then we need to specify that particular schema name here instead of DBO. Now we need to define the columns in this users table. For that, open and close parentheses. Now every table should have a unique identifier column using which we can easily identify the rows. For that, I'm going to use a column called ID. This column will be of type int and I cannot allow null values in this column. So I need to specify not null. Now I'm adding one more column called email. So in this column I'm going to store string values. So I'm going to use nvarchar as the data type of this column. I'm not going to set the limit maximum length of this column. So I can enter any number of values in this column. So I'm just keeping max, nvarchar max. In this column also I cannot allow null values. So I need to specify not null. I'm going to add one more column called is active. So this is a boolean column. In SQL, instead of boolean, we need to use a data type called bit, which is 0 or 1. 0 is for false, 1 is for true. Bit. In this column also I cannot allow null values, so I need to specify not null. Now I'm going to add one more column called date of birth. So in this column I'm going to store the date of birth of the users. So for that the data type is date time 2. In this column also I cannot allow null values, so I need to specify not null. And I'm going to add one more column called hobbies. So in this column I'm going to store string values. For that I'm going to use nvarchar. For this column also I'm not going to set any maximum length. In this column I can take null values, so I can use null instead of not null, which means this is a nullable column. Now for every table we definitely need to have a primary key using which we can uniquely identify a row. So in order to add a primary key to a table, we need to use the constraint keyword. Now we can use any of these columns as the primary key of this users table, but I'm going to use ID, which is definitely 100% a unique value for every row. After constraint, we need to specify the constraint name, which is pk underscore users. Then what constraint I'm going to add? I'm going to add a primary key, right? So primary key. Now which column I need to add as the primary key for this users table? I need to use this ID column, so I need to mention ID here. Now one more thing, I want this ID column to be automatically incremented whenever I insert a new record into the users table. For that I need to use identity keyword. Now if we execute the SQL command completed successfully. So if you open the extra DB tables, our new table got created. So under columns, all the 5 columns got created. ID column is mentioned as the primary key. Email is nworker, is active as bit, date of birth as date time 2, hobbies as nworker, which can allow null values. So if we expand keys, whatever the primary key that we just added, that will be stored here. I have used pk users as the primary key name. The same name has been used here. So if we expand indexes, by default, whenever you add a primary key to a table, a clustered index will be created for that particular table. So this is how we can create a table in SQL database with create table command. Now if you want to see what is the data that is stored in this table, we can use select star from this table name. Now if we execute that SQL command, now it is returning us the table but without any data, because we just created the table and we didn't insert any data yet into the users table. So that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to code.dev.